Welcome to the Dr. Joe Show, where we learn about women's health and sexual wellness. Our guest today is Katie Bulmer, and Katie, it is so great to see you. Can you just fill in the audience a little bit about what you're doing these days and kind of your background?
Yes. Sorry, I'm trying to fix something right here. Okay, there we go. Yes. So my name is Katie, and I am a speaker to sorority women. So I get to travel and or Zoom to visit different colleges, and that has actually grown through quarantine, which is crazy. But yeah, I everything I do has the passion behind it to be who I needed when I was younger. So whether that's I get to travel to different universities and speak to sororities. I have a podcast called Truth for Your 20s, and I do online mentoring. So again, all with that same passion just to be who I needed when I was younger and talk about all the things I wish I knew. So yeah, which is all encompassing, of course, but a lot of it has to do with dating and making healthy decisions when it comes to relationships.
Okay, so you get a lot of, I'm sure, interest in that subject when you're talking with sororities.
Yes, for sure.
Well, tell us, I can understand that from my research and background. Tell us some of your own background as far as some of the things that you experienced in college that you wish you would have known different ways to approach that you know now.
Yes. Well, essentially, I think it's all rooted, and of course, I didn't know this at the time, but it's all rooted in self worth, right? So I didn't realize I was anything special. I mean, we all like have these low view of ourselves, and mine was especially heightened when I was in college and didn't understand my worth, and so therefore didn't expect to be treated well. And so, of course, dated a lot of guys who didn't treat me well. And, a lot of times we like to, oh, well, he's a dirtbag. Well, maybe, but we allow ourselves to be treated poorly if we have a low self view. And there's obviously so many details around all of that. But I had a low view of myself, therefore dated a bunch of guys who treated me like crap. Heartbreak after heartbreak. And, essentially, I feel like I was trying my hardest with everything I have to be all the right things for all the wrong guys. And I'm an Enneagram 3, which I don't know if that means anything to you, but I'm an achiever. So I feel like I want to be the best at whatever it is I do. And so I'm like spinning my wheels, and if a breakup happens or a heartbreak happens, I'm like telling myself, well, maybe, I need to be prettier. I need to be smarter. I need to be more agreeable. And so I'm like becoming this chameleon for, and keep picking up on any clue. Oh, well, he says he likes this. So that therefore I need to be this way. And he says it like that. So I need to dye my hair and whatever it is, like just chameleon. And shockingly, I ended up exhausted, depleted, and giving all of my best self to people who didn't appreciate it. And yeah, so kind of find myself at a low point my senior year in college for sure, because, and then at that point I had the breakup that broke me, I call it. And that's like kind of all your eggs in one basket. Like, okay, no, this one really is going to work. And this one really is going to stand the test of time. And then it didn't. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't have any more options at this point, which is when I met Jesus, but that's a whole nother story.
Well, maybe we can talk about that a little bit later in our interview. But yeah, it's in my experience, Katie. Again, I worked for 5 years, basically, nearly exclusively with the college women's personal conditioning class that I created at Middle Tennessee State. It took them a while to start sharing with me, but after a while, I started learning about all this heartache and heartbreak and all the ways that got dirtbags, like a good word, good phrase, had treated them. And then I went on into working with sororities because the sorority women were in the class. They invited me to come, and I was working with them again on a more of a physical fitness and nutrition basis. But again, my story is that shifted in the direction that you're talking about when I realized there was a lot more damage being done, with this whole hookup culture than even their fitness and nutrition habits. Because and those were, those were challenging, but the what you're describing was even more challenging.
Yeah.
When you deal with sororities these days, do you find that just what you described there, that chameleon effect, which I think is so great, a great way to describe it. Do you find a lot of the young women are kind of on that same sort of hamster wheel you were on, or do you think that that's changed since you were in school?
Yeah, I think it's a lot the same, and I have deep conversations and coffee dates and mentoring sessions with girls crying into their lattes over, I always say it's the same thing in a different day. The biggest change is social media, but the same heartbreak and same underlying causes and motives and circumstances and results are all still there. And yeah, I definitely find that chameleon. And a lot of it is just lack of education. This is why, it's so great that what you're doing. And our culture is confusing at best, lying at worst. And it's just, you know, be a chameleon, go shack up with whoever you want to, no strings attached. And we're, oh, okay, and then we're wondering why, depression is on the rise and heartbreak, and they're going through all these motions and coming out the other side going, somebody told me something that didn't work. And no one even really knows where to put their finger on it because it looks shiny and it looks sexy and there's so many confusing messages out there. And so yeah, our poor young women, I feel like, are just walking around like, where do I go? This isn't fulfilling like the shiny label promised it would be, and now I don't know what to do. So yeah, that's just one of the passions I have, to help them make. And I always say, I'm not here to tell you what to do, I'm here to listen to what you want and then help direct you toward your path. Do you want a healthy long-term relationship? Awesome. Are the steps you're taking today setting you up for that future that you want? And it's like, once you think about it that way, you just that way, and then they can, oh, the steps that the decisions, the steps I'm taking today will affect me in my future, will set me up to be the path I want to go on or not. And there's forks in the road every day. You doesn't have where you went yesterday doesn't define where you're going today, but all of that's important. So they're just trying to listen to what they want and help direct them on the path that they say they want. That's a lot.
Right. Yeah, no, I've totally relate to what you're saying as far as my experience with them. And then also with their advisors. I mean, I had a sorority advisor just one day. She just kind of, we just got into a conversation, and she said, I mean, right out of the blue, she said, these women that I advise, they are letting guys do all kinds of bad things to them, really horrendous things to them, because they don't have a good self concept, and they don't have it. They don't understand how much they're worth. And this is, again, this is a woman that had no other reason to say this to me than that's her deepest observation. As far as I know, she isn't a Christian or anything like that either, so she doesn't have any necessarily ethical motivation to it. It was her observation. So I think, again, we've come to a place over, especially probably the last 10 years, but stretching back to, well, when were you in school? What were your years that you were in school?
98 to '02.
Okay, stretching back to that time, I
Yeah.
think that's probably the time where it really got started getting going, and that type of thing. And we've ended up where we're at now. And do you
Yeah.
think that when you talk to girls and young women, do you think that a lot of them, yeah, as they go through college, and if let's say they stay in the sorority their whole time they're in college, do you think they arrive at the same place you do as far as being disillusioned and sick of hookup culture and that type of thing?
Um, Yes. Actually, one of my friends recently did a interview on this and was just kind of asking, what are your thoughts on all this? And majority of women said they are against hookup culture and want nothing to do with it. The second largest grouping was, I participate because I don't really know another way. And a very small minority said, I like it. And so I don't feel like that's a whole lot different than when I was in school. I feel like that was the same. Maybe the only difference is the opinions of the masses are louder. So, social media or whatever you want to call it. So that's what I see. And as far as, again, it's what path they choose. Something that was just the most simple yet revolutionary thing that I learned is the principle of the path. This is a book, but essentially, if I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, if I want to drive to New York, I need to go north. Like, no one argues this concept. But when it comes to our life decisions, like, again, I want a healthy long-term relationship, or well, let's just take something simple. Like, I want to run a marathon one day. You get there by putting on your running shoes, going outside and practicing. Like, you can be like, I really, really want to run a marathon, and I have marathon pictures, and I have a marathon outfit, and I have marathon people I follow on social media, great. None of that prepares you until you get out the door and put on your running shoes. And so when it comes to that path, if this is what you say you want in a long-term healthy relationship, there are steps to help you get there before you even meet your future happily ever after, and healthy relationships start before you even meet that person. So anyway, I get on a high horse about that, but I am super passionate about helping the young women decide what matters to them and then what steps to take to get there.
Yes, and I share your passion, as you know, we're friends and that type of thing. I think there just needs to be a lot more people like us that have this same passion, because who knows how much heartache and trauma and that type of thing girls and young women are going through. And I know it can be traumatic as well as, for the young men, but they're kind of built more for promiscuity, I think, as far as, well, I don't think, I know, as far as their, brain chemistry, their anatomy, the whole thing. Now, it's um it has negative effects on them all the way through, but it especially has negative effects down the road if they end up not getting married and not getting the benefits of a committed relationship,
Yeah.
and I would say married relationship. So, and again, we know, you and I have spoken about this, but
Yeah.
for a young woman that's not married, and especially if they've been divorced, they stand a 50% greater chance of death from all causes for a woman that's unmarried. For a man, again, this is down the road a few years, it's 250% greater chance.
Wow.
So again, it's one of those things where the men at this stage, at this young adult stage, in a lot of cases, really don't know what's good for them, and they don't really have the intelligence. I'll just put it that way to realize, that exclusive relationships are so important. And again, the research on this again shows that the top 25% IQ wise of the males have that realization, but that means that, again, that you're, almost all of the girls and young women have the sex IQ to realize the importance of exclusive relationships. So really, young ladies that are listening to this, you've got this high sex IQ that you have to use. You've got this special gift, this special power. I mean, some people would look at it as an instinct, but really, I think it's an intelligence, because on the male side of it, it is related to intelligence. Your highest, as I said, and highest intelligent males will also get this, but you have to use this. Could you speak to that? You have to use this, young ladies. Can you speak to that a little bit, Katie?
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes to, again, deciding what you want and sticking to it. So what I talk to girls about is making a dating plan. And essentially that is deciding what matters to you in a dating relationship before you get caught up in blue eyes and cologne and flowers and whatever else. Because when you write down on paper that it is absolutely important to you to have a shared faith, to maybe not go down some physical boundaries, to have a guy who doesn't look at pornography, doesn't smoke, whatever. I'm not here to define that for you. You're here to define that for you. Because I've been mentoring young women for so many years, and I've never heard a girl say, I'm really looking for a guy who is dropping out of college and cusses at his mama. Like, no, nobody puts that. But I meet girls who date guys like this because they didn't have a plan and they didn't write this kind of stuff down. So writing down what matters to you. And every time I've given this kind of talk, and I basically say that when I go to colleges, I'm like, you set high standards, men will rise up. Men want to romance you. Look at every romantic movie and every romantic song. They want to rise up and chase your heart. And, there's so much about, like, and you taught me this, that women are choosers and men are chasers. And so when women are like, thank you for this text. Thank you for showing interest in me. But, this and this are my non-negotiables. The men might be like, oh, whatever for a minute, but they are excited about that because you are a rare and precious jewel and they want to romance you. So anyway, I basically say a lot of that when I go to the schools. And every now and then there'll be guys in the audience for whatever reason, like, guys working sound or some advisors or whatever. And it's always the guys who come up to me and they're like, you're right. If women raise the bar with their standards, men will rise up to meet the bar. And I'm like, preach it. Like, there it is. There it is. So
Yeah.
that's what I have found.
Yeah, the men need the discipline. And again, my master's is in history, so the history of this is that all up until recently they've been disciplined by society and by women, because women would, for the most part, act along the lines of what you're talking about. They would not allow sex, especially intercourse, to happen without an absolute commitment, and in most cases, a marriage type of a situation. So that's where all the power is in the whole situation for the women, is that having the assets, so to speak, and then having the also the intelligence to not just give them away, just not
Yeah,
just
women
to,
are the gatekeepers. I mean,
right,
like, yeah,
right,
100%.
right.
Yeah, and
So,
so, yeah, they can't say get mad at the guys, all they want is sex, then don't give it to them. Block their number. Like, you're in control.
right, exactly. How much do you think that this is I think related? How much do you think that alcohol and other drugs figure into this whole situation? Again, where these young women they have this intelligence, they understand and realize that hooking up isn't healthy, and really isn't gonna, they know inside that it's not gonna probably lead to what they're looking for. But how much do you think alcohol and other things like that help push women down this pathway?
Yeah, I'm sure it doesn't help. Well, as you know, and it taught me all these hormones at play when you have that attraction and that romance and even that infatuation, and you see them as like this golden human who can do no wrong. And as we know, we're all flawed, and so we can do wrong. But then you add some tequila to the mix, which inhibits any good decision making that was there to begin with, and then your inhibitions and your risk taking goes up. So yeah, it's pretty much a recipe for a lot of bad decisions, really. Yeah. So again, but then it's not unavoidable. It's not like you can't drink tequila and go hang out with cute guys, but deciding what matters beforehand, writing stuff down. I'm a big fan of writing down, and then surrounding yourself with people who will hold you to that. Like I'm a big, talk to sororities and having sisters in your corner and good friends. Like, sister, I love you, but I know you, and you do not want to make this decision to go home with this guy tonight. You're coming home with me. And then, oh my gosh, thank you, the next morning with a hangover and whatever. So we can in community like hold each other to a higher standard and community before you go to that party, girlfriend, like please watch out for me tonight. And we need to be responsible. It is not all in our friends. We need to like, I'm not going to drink too much. I'm not going to stay too late. Like, hold yourself to a higher standard, but also have incredible people around you and communicate this, what matters to you. And, one of the things I always say is temptation is easier to avoid than to overcome. So if you continually put yourself in tempting situations, you are not a superhero. So be smart, be wise, and can surround yourself with people who want the best for you as well. Is some of the best circumstances I would suggest.
Hmm. Well, I would heartily applaud what you just said, because again, biochemically, what you're saying is exactly right. Again, males biochemically and anatomically have the kind of sexual system just to be able to jump into any opportunity at a moment's notice. But a young woman, it takes more build up, and it takes more, I guess, preparation. And again, alcohol raises a young woman's testosterone by quite a bit, and that's going to be motivating towards having, being more sexual. But also, touch and that type of things that go on when you put yourself in those circumstances, also, help women, just to be plain about, get to that arousal state where once again, where they get as motivated as the guys are, as far as making the sex happen. So, young women need to be, you said it earlier, educated along these lines, and realize they weren't really built to jump into sex like the guys are. And so they need to guard themselves against, I think, those situations where alcohol is present, or some other mind altering substance, I should say.
Yeah.
And then also, where is this thing going to maybe lead to, through touch, through being in secluded places, other people acting this way. I mean, there's a lot of power in everybody. Well, everybody else is doing it, so we might as well too. But it, so I think that's we're both giving really good advice. The other thing, let's talk a little bit about the downside. And we're gonna need about an hour to do this, but we only have a half. So let's talk about the downside. And again, my background, my physiology background, I can tell you this really puts girls and young women in a bad place health wise as far as STDs and all the effects of that can bring, because women are much more they're prone to get STDs from these kinds of casual sexual relationships, and
Yeah,
also they're also prone not to show that they have them. So a lot of young women are asymptomatic, and so they end up having this damage being done on the inside over the years.
yeah,
For long after they're maybe done, hopefully, with the hookup culture, there's this stuff still going on. So do you think that young women and girls that you deal with, do you think they're aware of the risk they're putting themselves at?
no way. Yeah, like you said, that everyone's doing it, and I'll talk to that. But and there's so much at play here. Typically speaking, young people think they're invincible. I sure that happens to other people, but not me. And so for sure that. And then no, I don't think this is talked about. I mean, sex ed is confusing at best, and it's a brief overview. And again, they're tuning out. They're embarrassed. Oh, well, that's for someone else, not for me. And so when they're learning or crash course in life lessons like living whatever it is they quote learned in sex ed, then well, that just happens to the prostitutes, whatever, like but not me. These are good wholesome boys from upper class neighborhoods, whatever it is. No, it can't happen to them, and they probably don't even know about it. Even if we put this on a billboard somewhere, it might help, but they don't know about it, and they think they're invincible, unfortunately. I mean, I know I did. I actually got in a pretty bad car accident my freshman year in college, and that was a huge eye opener. I mean, I remember thinking clearly, like, wow, like I'm not invincible. Like clearly remember I was 19 years old. Like I could die at any moment. I mean, this is the reality of our mortality. And it did not hit me until that car wreck, which maybe opened up my eyes a little bit. I still made several reckless decisions throughout college. But I think that realizing, that this could happen at any point
Mhm.
is one part of it. And then also just educating them about it. So, yeah, I don't think that the large majority of college women know about what we're talking about for sure.
Right, and their focus hasn't been brought to it either. I mean, it's one thing to, like you said, my observation, of professors that are teaching have been teaching sex ed, and actually, I got into that as far as I've done a fair amount of that since I formally stopped teaching, and I've tried to create it along the lines of what you're talking about, where it's actually effective, practical, and easy to understand, and really speaks to the situation they find themselves in, instead of all this, mechanics of condoms and the things that people can figure those kind of things out. I'm not saying they're not important, but it really the sex ed really hasn't not hit the right spot as far as with young people, and that's something that I'm actually working on. So, and
Good.
I think maybe in combination with you at some point might be a really good thing, because you have a way of explaining things, I think, that's you know I mean, it complements the way I explain things as well. So
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem. In sex ed, it's usually an English teacher, or like, and she's just doing it because she's told she's had to by the state or whatever. And so, this isn't her wheelhouse or his or whatever. And so
yeah,
there's just several things at play that don't educate our young people at all, for
it
sure.
it doesn't connect really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and before we leave that subject, yeah, STDs hit their all-time high historically in 2015, and then they've just continued to rise from there. So and I won't get into statistics right now, but it's massive. It's a massive situation. So again, just one statistic, um, a sexually active young person of either sex, it will one and two of them will have an STD by the time they hit 25, if they stay
Oh my gosh.
stay sexually active. I wrote a book on this subject called Battles of the Sexes, and um, my co-author, who's given me permission to share this, Sarah, she was sexually active sorority woman at the time she was, in college. I had her in class in 2007. We ended up writing this book together, and she was the nutrition expert on the book. And then I think it was during the course of the time that we were working on the book, she got informed through one of her checkups that she had cervical cancer, and they traced that back. And this was like 7 or 8 years after she was out of college. They traced that back to her sexual activity, in college. And again, she'd gotten this HPV virus and she didn't even know she had it for all those years. And then suddenly she's showing symptoms for cervical cancer. And that's one of the major well, it is the major cause of cervical cancer. And then also vaginal cancer is caused by young and promiscuous sexual activity. So
Wow.
and there's we don't have time here to go into it, but there's all these other behavioral things that women could be informed of and they could do besides the sexual integrity that we're advising, that would
Yes.
also help with their health as their life progresses and that type of thing. So but
Yeah.
just take it from me on this, that that doing what Katie's describing, ladies, and getting this kind of a code that you have, and making a plan is only going to benefit you going in the future on a couple levels. One level, you're going to be able to you're going to be able to create a relationship that's going to last,
Yeah.
as opposed to what hookup culture does. And on the other level, you're going to keep yourself healthy from all these things that you could be getting and probably are getting if you're sexually active and just don't know about it yet. So,
Yeah.
and they're life threatening. I mean, that was life threatening. She had to have everything, Sarah had to have everything taken out except for her ovaries. And
Wow.
yeah. And so, fortunately, that she and her husband had their two baby boys that they wanted to have. So her story ended up happy comparatively, but there's a lot of them
Yeah.
that don't end up happy. Yeah. So know about all of those things. Generally, what Katie, again, the young women that are hopefully listening to this and watching, what she's describing is really the best of all worlds. It's a win-win-win situation, three-dimensional wins. So let me ask a few more things. Tell us about the you're coming to Jesus, so to speak. What you finding Jesus has did in your college career.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I was really kind of coming to the end of myself, which you hear often in coming to Jesus stories, I guess, because we're such a independent creatures. And I grew up in Georgia, so I knew who Jesus was a little bit. I didn't really grow up in church, so I knew something about death on a cross and something about Noah's Ark, but didn't really know how that applied to me or why I cared.
Right.
And also didn't have any clear examples of what it looked like to be a Christian and be cool. My examples of Christians, I was convinced they couldn't even spell the word fun. They, wore long skirts and hid themselves in the closet and to read their Bible for fun on the weekends. And I was like, cool for you. But no. So I just was like, I'll just kind of put that on the back burner. And I remember legitimately thinking, yeah, I mean, Christian, but it sounds like a good idea and good people are Christians. And I'll totally do that when I'm a grandma, like totally. But meanwhile, I want to dance on the table and go have fun. And I did not, I thought that God was a bunch of rules who wanted to steal my fun, which doesn't sound sexy, right? And I did not understand that he was a good father who wanted what was best for me and only gave me, I don't even like the word rules, gave me guidelines because he cares about me. I have two children now and I give them guidelines because I want them to grow up healthy and happy children. I'm teaching them to do chores because I don't want them to be slobs. I want them to have roommates one day who like them and want to live with them. I'm giving them bedtimes because I want them to show up for their tests with a clear mind and stuff like that. So I finally understood that I have a good God through the woman at the well story. So basically, after that breakup that broke me, as I described it, I showed up at a Greek girls' Bible study. I was still in a sorority at that time. And I heard the woman at the well. And essentially, she was a heartbroken woman who had been married 5 times, which in that culture was even more scandalous than we would think of it as today. And I just so identified with this woman. She was heartbroken. She kept, oh, if only I was prettier, if only I was smarter, if only I was this for this guy or that guy. And the king of the world met her there and it broke all cultural barriers. There's so many reasons he shouldn't have been there and shouldn't have talked to her. And
Mhm.
it's actually the longest recorded conversation with Jesus in scripture with a heartbroken girl. And I was like, that's me too. And the verse that stood out was, I came to give you eternal water so you'll never thirst again. Essentially meaning you're so thirsty, you keep coming back, you keep thinking if you're prettier or smarter or more popular or whatever, then you're going to be fulfilled and you're filling a cup that has holes in the bottom. It's never going to work. I came to give you eternal water so you'll never thirst again. And that was my like aha moment. that changed everything. And the next guy I dated was my husband. So it worked out.
Well, that's quite a great story, and again, a great and happy ending, happily ever after, as you said earlier. And you were giving me chills there from hearing in your story, and of course I've heard it before, but it's very moving though. When in my mind's eye, I put it up against the girls and young women that I've worked with over the years, and just seeing all of the really heartbreak and the coming to the end of your rope, so to speak, like you said. I mean, I've seen a lot of that, and
Yes.
just continued frustrating life, really. Living a frustrated life, knowing there's no better way. Uh, so again, and your husband. I don't know if you mentioned this, but your husband is a used to be a youth pastor, and
Yes. So we
now
were
he's
married for 17 years. He was a youth pastor for 10 of those years. And now he works at the local college and advising. But just working with young people has just been a passion of ours. It started with high school and now college students. But yeah, so we're just really passionate about young people in general.
yes. Well, that's easy to see. So again, unfortunately, we're running out of time here. But what other things, again, do you feel like you're in the right spot as far as your work goes? And again, do you feel like you're communicating? Oh, well, here's something I wanted to ask you about. Um, you and I were just kind of talking casually a while back, and again, you're much better at this social media situation than I am. But down the road a little bit, you told me you're posting some of our conversations on TikTok. Can you speak to what happened there?
Sure. Yeah. So working with you, I've learned a lot of cool and fascinating stuff about the biology and God's design for sex and how it all matches up and science and all kind of stuff. And so essentially I said what I've learned from working with a PhD of sexual health, which was a lot of people thought it meant that I had a PhD. So it's so funny, something you would get it regularly 1,000 views on, you never even consider that people will read differently. So that happens. But what I learned from working with PhD, who was you, and I was talking, the one that went the most viral was saying how vasopressin is a hormone that men and women both have, but predominantly in men, and these is a bonding chemical, and it helps men to bond the longer they date. So these receptors grow, if I'm explaining this correctly, the receptors
Exactly.
grow, and the men are more attracted, more connected, because they have dated and got to know this woman versus just hopping in the sack, because those vasopressin kind of has this explosion and then fades off, and so they don't have that time to bond. Was that a good
Yeah,
synopsis?
that's perfect.
Okay.
That's what I mean about you communicated
Well,
better than I do. I may have the science, but you got the language.
all God's people, right? So I put this in a 30-second TikTok, and it blew up. Between Reels and TikTok combined, it had 5 million views, which sounds great. But it was around sex, which is a controversial topic. And now I will say like 90% positive, but as a human, you hear that 10% negative louder. And I was like hiding under the covers from the social media world for a while, like, oh my gosh. Um, since the dust has settled and since I have like kind of come out of that, so to answer your question, do I kind of feel like where I am supposed to be? 100%. I've never been more sure I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it's funny because God keeps bringing that up when I do get brave and talk about, these controversial issues on the internet, an outpouring of thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. Now, yeah, yeah, you get that negative too. But like, I feel like that continual tap on my shoulder, like, Katie, let's do this. Let's do this. Like I've uniquely prepared you to talk about this subject. And I could tell you all day long, I don't want to, and Jesus pick somebody else. But my passion for young women, my own personal past, and what I learned from working with you and the young women, and still seeing the same struggles and passions and heartbreak that they're facing that I faced. I'm just trying to talk about it, whether that's through a 30-second TikTok or whatever it may be, just helping them, give them tools, because no one else is talking about vasopressin growing the longer you date someone versus hopping in the sack. And then Cardi B is talking, no, hop in the sack with anyone and everyone you want. And she gets, millions of dollars for this song. So there's confusion out there. And I always say, there's a lot of loud voices, but there's very few true voices. So listen to the true voices. And so my prayer is just to be one of those true voices for young women to help them understand, that God's design for sex is the best. And it's not for rules, it's not to take joy away from you. It's because He's a good, loving Father who wants incredible things for you. And it's actually giving you more than you can ask or imagine. So,
Yeah, I couldn't agree any more. I couldn't have said it as well either. What do you, a couple last questions here. What do you find has been most fulfilling over your life? And I think I've got a feeling I may already know this, but what have you found most fulfilling since your college years?
I mean, a lot of things. Obviously, finding my worth in the Lord and not boys and Bacardi. And then ultimately, I always say that I met the only man who could ever complete me. His name is Jesus. And then meeting the best example of him on this earth, and that is Brian. And I would have married any of those dirtbags who asked me back in college days, and praise the Lord that that did not work out. Because I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, how different life would have been. And, just recently, Brian and I were talking about like getting a puppy, which is like not the biggest life decision, but it's a big one. And, ultimately, I wanted a puppy more than he did. And we came to this like, what is our ultimate goal together when it comes to money, when it comes to our future, when it comes to time? Like, is to serve God and make his name great. And so whether a puppy helps with that or not, I don't know. Like that's just like a detail, but we're ultimately on the same team on that same mission. And I've heard it said like you're not going to find in the Bible anywhere that you should get a puppy, that you should move, that you should be this major, date this person, whatever. But you are going to find how can this bring me closer to God. And so I'm just so thankful to be on the same journey with him through life. And I think about how differently that could have been over those guys that I cried over, and how ultimately we have a good father who wants what's best for us. And thankfully, he gave me something better than I can ask or imagine, like I said before. So, yes, that's definitely something that I didn't see coming, and so thankful that I have it.
Yes, and I have found the same thing with my wife of over 40 years as well. What a fulfillment she is, and how fortunate I count myself. A lot of decisions like you described right there. Is there
Yeah.
anything that I haven't asked you? Again, you're an expert on all this. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you like young girls and young women to know about that you know right now?
Um, my heart goes out for you. I know that it is hard out there. I know that you feel like everyone is living this hookup lifestyle. I want to let you know that they're not, that they're just the loud minority, even, and that you will find that when you are brave and you stand up against culture in college, everyone is looking for someone else to be brave. And you can give your friends the gift of going first. And that means just, of course, you're not gonna be judgmental, but like, no, that's not for me. Thanks, anyways. And you staying strong in your beliefs and what you're committed to and what your heavenly father says is best, and what you probably know instinctually, as you said, that women's instincts of what's best for your future life. You may feel that initial sting of like, oh, they're not going to like me. 100% you're going to find people surprisingly come out of the woodwork with respect for you and what you're doing. And you'll be surprised how many people like, oh, thank God that you went first, because me too, I also don't want to live this lifestyle. And then you're going to have that community, and then that sisterhood of women around you supporting each other. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I would just encourage you to be brave and give someone else the gift of going first by living countercultural.
Yes, and again, once again, I totally agree and applaud what you're saying, Katie. Tell us again. We've only just got like a minute left here. Tell us how these young women can follow you, get in your movement, because I can feel a movement that you're creating here. Tell us.
Say louder, a movement. I like it. Yeah, my favorite social medias are Instagram and TikTok, and it's Katie Bulmer Life. So at Katie Bulmer Life, my last name is like Fulmer with a B. So Katie Bulmer Life, and my website is the same, and my DMs are always open. So yeah, and I had my podcast is called Truth for Your 20s. So a little shout out for that as well.
Wonderful. Well, it's been an honor to speak with you again here today, and I just appreciate so much what you're doing and your heart, and just the difference you're making in so many young women's lives. I know, and hopefully I can join you in that quest, and others will join us, and we can get a better direction for the young people of this country. So, Katie,
Yes.
thank you so much.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Take care.